Hey, Trish, you there?
I'm here.
Going here. I have to make sure they all sync up.
Trish,
Yes.
I've been trying to say hi for a little while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Dr. Allen.
Hi, and welcome to the meeting. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, I will read the statement. Just give me one more second here.
We're waiting while we have our statement.
Okay.
The government's here and they to help us.
This meeting will be recorded and will be posted to YouTube and other social media platforms. By participating in this meeting, you understand that the recording could contain your video stream or your audio stream, including images of yourself or anyone in the room with you. If you choose to enable your video device or audio device during the meeting, as well as anything or anyone else that may be in the background could be recorded. The recording could include any opinions you contribute and anything you say about yourself. On occasion, chat within the meeting could also be captured in the meeting recording. Therefore, anyone attending the recorded meeting may have aspects of their personal data recorded if they actively participate or not.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Peggy's motion. Okay, second. All in favor? Abstain? Okay, I don't think we need to have anybody against. Policies. You have one or two, I see. Sheila talked to me about this down at the Cape, and I think most of these are the School Committee Association bringing us up to speed, up to date, up to PC, up to whatever. So are these all yours or some of them?
Some of them are the business office, but not the first 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not the first 6.
Okay. Now, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go through these. I just got mine. But when Sheila was talking to me about it, it seemed to me they're basically perfunctory. So you want to go through it, just hit the highlights?
I shall. The first, as Cheryl said, the first 6 were really brought forward by Dr. Campione as part of her tiered focus monitoring review, which is an annual process that DESE comes in and looks at a lot of aspects of our operations, and Kristen generally collects all the data and submits all of the necessary information to DESE. And so during that process, there were primarily some minor wording changes, omissions that had existed in our policies that we would like to suggest updating. So if you're looking at file, the first one is educational opportunities, equal educational opportunities, and I can pull it up on the
That's
screen.
JB. Yeah.
JB. You can see noted in the top left on that page there in the box, there is it's a little note.
So we don't
That
have
identifies-
educational opportunity equal for handicap, but we have them for limited English proficiency.
We're going to remove handicap because that's an old term, and we will add limited English proficiency throughout that policy. And
Sheila, do you know if those were uploaded to the drive?
they're in the drive. They're under policy for special ed audits.pdf. I can share my screen and put them on the screen.
They're like 6 down, Deb.
Yeah, the ones just uploaded today were all the.
See if I can help you. I just opened.
I looked at these. Oh, this one.
Love technology.
I don't-
Boy, I'll tell you, all this machinery and equipment and all
They're
that.
they're very minor.
Yeah, my intent is to go through all of them. And if we have a discussion or a comment on any, we will. And then present them to the school committee as a block. I don't think we need to, I mean, there's a whole bunch here. It'd take half the evening to vote on each one.
So I'll just wait for Mr. Deschamps to get.
We're waiting for Mr.
No,
Deschamps.
are you all set? Or I can help you?
No, you know what, I'll go with that,
I
that's
can
okay.
share with
All
them.
right. Okay, thank you.
Any comments or questions on this one?
So this one, all we're doing is removing the word handicap. We're in the appropriate location and adding limited English proficiency.
Okay, school admissions.
There's two of them. This is E1, correct?
So JFE1. And addition, we're adding homelessness in limited English proficiency. Throughout, you can see it's highlighted there in every instance in red in the text. And there is a paragraph 7, or bullet 7, excuse me, number 7 at the very end. And these are all recommended MASC changes, I believe, are recommended from our tiered focus monitoring process.
Any
Just a-
comments or questions on this one? Okay. School admissions.
School admissions, which is JFE2. So same thing, we're adding homelessness and we're adding limited English proficiency in
And paragraph
every,
6.
and then a paragraph 6, which is, I believe, exactly the same paragraph as paragraph 7 that was added in the previous policy.
Okay. Comments or questions on this one? All right. School year, school calendar.
School year, school calendar. This is an addition, this is the paragraph that's in red there. This is identifying that we should be collecting, if students are involved in independent study or school to work programs, we should be collecting the hourly participation in each course on a weekly basis. And this should be a log that is accessible in the student management database.
Okay, and I suppose if I put a paragraph 4 in there that we shouldn't open before Labor Day, the chances of that passing.
I'll go for
That
that.
may be a problem.
Any comments or questions on that one? Okay. JJE, co-curricular.
JJE, also adding homelessness and limited
Limited English proficiency.
And proficiency there is not spelled correctly on that top box, so we can fix that.
Okay, we okay with that one? All right, AC.
And AC, we are merely adding homelessness to this policy. And
Okay,
it's only appears once in that
all right,
policy.
so okay with that one? All right, we'll make that part of the block after we, now, are you with the rest of these, Cheryl?
No, not the next one, JJ-E, that's not mine.
JJ-E.
Co-curricular and extracurricular activities.
That's the one that's out of order. So JJE, that was the second to last one we just looked at. They're out of order on your packet does not match the order of the agenda. AC and JJE were just,
Yeah, the technical term is we did that one already.
Okay, so now I think most of the rest of them. are-
now, yes, the remainder are Cheryl's.
Okay,
Let me go back and open.
so DA,
Actually, Dr. Allen, I'd like to start with the update to regulations and application process for community use of school facilities. It's not the policy, it's the regulations. Yes, you've got your fingers on it right now.
This?
Yes. So last month I brought this to the committee. Dr. Allen asked me to come back tonight because we were adding some language, and I'm glad that he actually did, because as what usually happens when you put a new policy or procedure into place, the first time you need to go back to the language, you go, that's not clear. And that's what we did with his. So there is a few changes. The first thing that happened was we met with the team member who's working on our new district website. And she said, are you tied to this plant and facilities title? And we like, why? She said, because people won't know where to find your page for buildings and grounds. So we took it upon ourselves, Sheila wasn't there, to change the department name, and hence the subcommittee name. We talked to Mr. Nutter. Throughout the document, plant and facilities or plant and facilities office has been changed to buildings and grounds office.
Okay.
The next was under personnel fees. When we were talking, and this came about because someone was asking to use Hubbardson Center School, and Mr. Clark brought to my attention that school is alarmed. So what you remember when I came back last month, we said, if you're going to use the middle high school for any purpose, there needs to be a custodian on site. Well, there needs to be a custodian on site at Ruggles Lane and Hubbardson also, because those buildings are alarmed. And if we don't alarm the building and something happens, we're going to be held liable. So I changed number 4 under custodial ground staff to say, all users of Quabbin Regional Middle High School and Ruggles Lane and Hubbardson Center School shall be required to pay a custodial fee and overhead fee. Also, because our contract language says, and this is up for discussion by the committee, of course, our contract for the buildings and ground staff says that if they are called back to set an alarm, unarm a building, do a security check, it's a minimum of 3 hours. So if the committee wants to recoup that we have to pay the employee, we would have to charge that group a 3-hour minimum.
So that's 156.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Shoot in here.
Number 5 is what I really said last month that we needed to add, was that it's up to the Buildings and Grounds Office to determine if more than one custodian was needed. There was a pretty large event at Ruggles Lane this weekend, and if
The Indian thingy?
Yes, yes. And there was over 300 people there. The number of people went from 75 to 200. And while we were walking through the space, went from 200 to 250 to 300 in a matter of minutes. And actually, we feel more than 300 people attended. So we just wanted to give the leverage to the plant facility staff. We believe we'll need more than one person. So if we do this, at the end, you'll see that there's going to be like an estimate given to the person up front when their application is approved. So they can say, or they could talk it out, okay?
Did we charge them anything?
We didn't, we only I don't know, we only charged them did we charge them for their thing?
For the library association?
Yeah,
For
we're
the.
charging the
I think for the
custodial fee.
Custodial fee, because
But
it's
under the
Saturday.
old policy. And they had a cafeteria staff member as well, so they're being charged for that. That again was, I only wanted for 2 hours, 4 hours, she was there for 6¼ hours. On number 7, we took out that any facility used at an elementary school and named Hardwick, New Braintree, and Oakham can choose to pay for custodial coverage or can choose to have a contact person take responsibility for the security of the building and the cleanliness of the building. Number 8 talks about the 3-hour minimum. We added quite a bit to the kitchen use and school nutrition staff. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of input from Kerry when I first worked on this. She wasn't available, but we did this today. Because the school district's operating budget does not subsidize the school nutrition program, she has to charge the actual fee for the actual person on site. So in the custodial group, we took an average of rates to be charged, and no matter who's working it, that's the rate. But in the school nutrition program, because we have to actually cover all the expenses, we're asking that the committee consider if it's on Monday through Friday, it's an hourly rate charge of that person providing the service. Or if it's on a Saturday or Sunday, it's time and a half or double time of that person's rate. So that everything is covered for the school nutrition program.
We don't charge NJROTC, do we? When they have their spaghetti thing?
No, that's a district.
Because that's category 8 or category 1?
Bless you. They are charged for the food. They're not charged for the use of the building or the custodians or anything like that, but they're charged, actually Carrie met with the captain today to go over the menu. So they do have to pay any of the food that is.
Over the menu is spaghetti and meatball.
He wants sausage. We're not sure we can get sausage. He doesn't want meat sauce. He doesn't want Parmesan cheese in a shaker. It's a deal, Dr. Allen. So Kerry is working out what the costs will be so that he can appropriately charge his ticket prices. After that, I just made those types of
Yeah, the
changes.
building and grounds, building and grounds, building and grounds.
On page,
Four of those.
on page 6, I did not have this in the initial chart. If a group is asking for catering services, so that's the school nutrition team actually providing a meal or something, they need to contact the school nutrition director. I tell them how to do that. Another buildings and grounds. And the invoicing data that you'll find on page 8 is just expanded a little to take into place the three-hour minimum for custodians, or if there's multiple school team members, it can be listed there to give an idea of what the cost may be for renting the space.
Okay. Any comments or questions from committee members?
Cheryl,
Yes,
I noticed that you had OCAM not part of Ruggles Lane in Hubbardston. I don't know if it's because of the size of the school, but OCAM does have a alarm system.
oh, no, I have to change that. Thank you, Tricia.
You're welcome.
That was not given to me, so I'll have to move that up to the front.
Well, when we make the motion, we will assume that you have added that to that particular,
I can do it actually right now.
well, I'm sure you can.
Yes. So I guess it's only Hardwick, and I don't know why I didn't get that
In
information.
New Braintree?
I'm in the Braintree. Thank you, Tricia. You saved me from coming back another month.
Okay, you're going to do the fiscal management now?
I'm going to fly through those, yes.
Good. DA.
Moment, please. I'll make sure I make save and break changes here. Get out and toggle over to the next one. Okay, which one, Dr. Allen?
DA.
DA.
A? Did we talk about DA?
No change, really.
Okay,
But there are
so-
changes, but you didn't have any issues of
So
concern.
on these documents, the red are the changes that the MASC suggests we make to the current policy, which is in black. So Jess Bennett did all of this work for you. I put my notes up in a box on top, so when I sent it back to Sheila and others, they would know what my thoughts were on these. I have no issues with how MASC wants to change the fiscal management goal policy.
I love this. We'll use these funds wisely in pursuit of the district's goals. What are we going to do? Use them unwisely before? It just blows my, yeah.
Well, there may be others that do it unwisely, so
Well,
they have to look
given
at the
some of the-
macro, not the micro.
given some of the people we saw last week in their districts, I accept your point. Well made. Okay, so that's DA. DB1, basically you rewrote that one, didn't you? Or somebody rewrote
These
it.
are the three that.
Yeah,
are
so
redundant.
actually there is on file a DB, which is annual budget, but DB1 is an exact, that's been totally stricken by MASC. File DB1 was completely changed and said to read as a regional school district annual budget. That's the one I think we should adopt. However, did she change finance committee? Because I didn't change that on mine. It says finance subcommittee. Did she change that to
Changed
the
the
right?
budget subcommittee.
Yeah, okay.
Did she change that? She
Yes.
did put budget subcommittee. You can
Okay.
see it's highlighted here in,
Budget, okay, it said finance before.
yeah.
I did notice on the DB1, DBD, and DBJ, no, not DBJ. At the bottom, there's a place where it says school council instead of school committee.
No, that's one of my concerns on DB1. They do seek that there's input from school council. So it's not the school committee, right?
Right.
Dr. Mew, you can explain what that is.
So it says, school councils are really, and I think the way that works in our district is that our budget is developed to support our strategic plan goals and our annual school goal, our school and district goals. And the school council is really part of helping the principals develop their school improvement goals. So I think that's how we see the school council's input into the budget development. The school council helps the principal, gives input for the school improvement goals, and then our budget is developed to accomplish those goals. So that's really the connection there.
Okay, all set with that one?
So Cheryl, just to be clear, you are recommending that we do not adopt DB because you believe that DB is a duplicate of DB1, of the revised DB1, because it essentially says the same thing but applies to regional schools.
Yes.
So we don't need a DB and a DB1.
That's what I believe. I said I think the DB was an annual, was written as an annual budget for each type of school district. And DB, as it's listed, DB1 here is really our DB for regional school districts. We only need one.
So we don't need, that's why DB is not on your agenda, but it is in your packet just because it was part of what the MASC, provided to us.
Okay. We all set on that one?
So this is what will go forward.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
DB1, right.
We
DB1.
will replace the other one with this one, which Cheryl believes is what we do, and the other one is a duplicate, or too much of a duplicate of this.
Right, no, I understand that. I just want to make sure there's clarity, once this goes to the full committee, because it says DB1 here and it says DB1 here. I just want to make sure
Yes.
there's no confusion.
MASC also recommends regulations for budget apportionment of expenses, which is similar to the one we have now. They're just adding the words by state formula, which is how we do it. In districts that don't use the state formula, you remember how I always say that every budget year where we're building it, districts that use a regional agreement formula would not be able to adopt this policy as they recommend it.
Okay, we set on that one? All right. DB1R.
That's the one we just spoke of. Those are the regulations that Cheryl just referred to.
Okay, by state formula, so we're all set on that one then.
Right.
Budget deadlines and schedules, DB.
They recommend you add a sentence, the calendar year for budget preparation will be determined by calculating backwards from the final adoption date. Dr. Allen, I'll let you comment on that sentence, because I think I feel the same way.
Who the hell knows what it's going to be? Is
Exactly.
that word for word?
Of what I would say, yeah. That's what we do anyway. We know we have to have a public hearing in March. We know we have to go to have April assessment letters. We know we have to go to the first town meeting whenever they send it. Again, it's not written really for regional schools because you don't know when the town meetings will be held. I don't think it's needed, but
Certainly.
You want it in there?
do I want it in there? I
Do
don't
we have to
think,
have it in there?
no, it's MASC's recommendation. MASC is Mass Association of School Committees.
You want to have some fun and take it out?
Yeah, I'd love to have some fun, take it out.
Want to do that?
It makes no sense.
Makes sense.
Agreed.
Okay, would you kindly strike that for what we present to the school committee?
All right, let me see.
Leave it in, but strike it out, okay?
I just did. I did it on mine still.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
We have to have a little fun, for goodness sakes. We always do what someone tells us to do. Okay. Budget planning, DBD.
So it looks like in this one here, they moved some paragraphs around and expanded on it, which I have no problem with. And my comment was last
School
paragraph
council.
was school council, but Dr. Muir explained what that is, so I think this is fine the way it's reflected here.
Okay, DBG. Cost centers.
This is a problem. We can't adopt it as we have it. We do not build a budget based on cost centers. So there's a regulation by DESE that says a school committee must adopt a format by which they approve a budget and allow budget transfers. It doesn't say it has to be by cost center. Cost center to me is a couple of things. Each school is a cost center. Buildings and grounds is a cost center. Athletics is a cost center. School nutrition is a cost center, but not in the budget. But that's not how we build our budget. We build our budget by appropriation control categories, those 16 categories that we have expenses in. So I think we need to change this instead of at cost center level, it would be appropriation category level.
So you're going to change that cost center level?
That's what I would like to do, yes.
Anybody have a problem with that?
Nope.
Do it.
Thank you.
Okay, so cost centers will be changed to appropriation control.
Okay, DBJ, well, you have cost centers again.
Same thing, right?
And just change cost centers to
Yep.
appropriation categories and actually,
Finance.
Oh, it should be budget subcommittee,
yes, which would be full school committee, actually.
quarterly report.
Transfers get,
So are we changing that we're gonna return the funds at the close of the fiscal year from the general account?
no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. Because this, again, MASC is just like DESC, which is like a lot of the other agencies. They forget about regional school districts that have been around since 1949. We do not return any money to the municipality. So no, we would like to strike that as well.
We sure and devil don't.
So,
Because they struck out, will be transferred to the excess and
Right,
deficiency,
right.
and not to exceed 5%. That needs to go all back in while return to the municipality comes out. The only time that a regional school district has to return money to a municipality, a member town, is if we have more than 5% in our E&D account. And how E&D is calculated is we just finished FY '22. I just filed for excess and deficiency to be certified for FY '22. It cannot be more than 5% of FY '23's budget.
What are we, about 2%?
We're not even quite there. I don't remember what the number, I just did it last week.
718, something like that?
but, It's not very much. It's like $1.6 million, which we haven't had a million in a long, long time. But it's nowhere near the limit. If I can do the limit quickly. I can do the limit quickly.
Well, if we're 34 million, what would it
36.
be?
Yeah, let me do it.
About 700.
Can't do it in my brain, Dr. Allen.
I can't do it on a machine.
She can, but she doesn't want to show off.
1.85, we're not close to 1.85.
Okay. All right, DEC, federal
So,
funds.
okay,
So this one
Clear on
here,
this
let
one.
me back up a second. So you're going to repurpose or restructure that whole last paragraph?
yes, we're presenting to you how MASC recommended.
Understand.
The last one, we would like to take the red out and revert everything that is been struck here back into the policy.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're also changing cost centers to
Appropriation
appropriation
categories and finance subcommittee
budget
because when it's
subcommittee.
Yep.
Or
Okay, we
school
said,
committee.
school committee, our school committee votes on transfers, not in the finance subcommittee. That's why they're trying to make a policy to fit everyone, and it doesn't.
no. Okay, DEC, federal funds supplement, not supplant policy. How the hell do you have funds
That
supplant
one's no
policy?
problem.
Which one is this?
Funds and
It's
policy
the
are not,
grants, we can't supplant
it says policy.
DEC.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Didn't we do this one? Are we doing DD?
DEC.
DEC.
I
DEC.
thought we did that one last time. Oh, yes, this is just silly, but, Yes, we know we can't do this. We know we can't do this, and I do have a book that says we can't do this, because I was asked by the auditors to put an internal control manual together maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. So we have our internal control manual for federal grants that all of our grant managers have. Do you have
What
it?
I'm saying is the title doesn't make any sense. We can't have funds supplant policy. A fund is not a policy.
Yeah, that, you can read it 2 different ways, yes.
Okay, I'm reading in standard English.
Well, none of the other policies have the word policy at the end, but I believe this is what this one says. This one has the word policy at the end. It shouldn't be.
Alan, there's an object at the end of the verb. The verb supplant is kind of hanging out there. It needs another object before policy. I think that's what the confusion is.
Yeah, policy programs or something.
Really?
But if this is the way they want it.
Yeah, but we should take out the, I think they've added the word policy in because it's a policy, but they don't do that for anything else. I think the word policy could come out.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Federal funds supplement, but not supplant.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
Everybody okay with that?
okay.
All right. DGA, authorized signatures.
This is updating the policy by legislation that was passed a couple of years ago that allowed the regional school districts to go from 3 members to sign warrants to 1. So it's just
Is
adding.
that the mighty Dave?
That is the mighty Dave.
There's the date.
And the mighty Mr. Wolanin, who's on backup usually.
Yeah, usually.
Well, on behalf of the whole school committee, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, it's a process that got refined during COVID that worked out really well. Because as much as I enjoyed coming up to spend 3 seconds signing a warrant and then spending a half hour visiting, they just enjoyed my company, interrupting their day.
That goes without saying, sure.
We do it at home and it's very clean and it's please and thank you. And it's no interruptions.
Okay. So we're all set with that one, right? Okay, DH.
So DH, we do have an issue with because they're actually writing the policy to include the treasurer and assistant treasurer, which we already do. So there are 3 people in our district that are bonded. The district treasurer, the district assistant treasurer, and myself, even though I have no authority to touch a penny in any account. I can't even call and ask about an account, but I am. The way that this policy is written is anybody who is dispensing, is being changed to dispersing school funds will be bonded. The auditor, you'll remember, the auditor brought this up 2 years ago. And I said, that's not a decision for me to make. It's a decision for the school committee to make. And the school committee voted no, not to bond everybody. Everybody would mean a principal who has a checkbook of student activity, because by law, only the principal can sign student activity checks to a checkbook. And the office managers and secretaries who actually take the cash in from the book fair or whatever. We also have cashiers in every school lunch program. So that's what this policy, as it reads, anyone who has access to cash. So if that's what the committee would like to do, I'll get it in place for next year when we go up to get the bonds. So I think we have a vote of the committee not to do this, but that's what the policy says.
It was a cost of the bonds though.
It's a different cost for all 3 of us, and it's based on an amount of money, but they range from $650 to $800 per year.
Well, if the school committee, that was their position last time, is there any reason to change it?
I don't feel there's a need to change it, but the policy does say each employee of the district who is assigned to responsibility of receiving and dispersing school funds.
I say we leave it the way it is.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with Peg.
Yeah, I agree, Peggy.
Or is there,
It doesn't seem necessary.
do we know what a blanket policy would? And I assume it would be astronomical.
I have never asked, but I can ask for a quote on a blanket policy with the number of people we would have.
No, comes under the heading if it's broken or not.
So do we want to change this policy that says each employee?
No, we're going to keep it the way it is.
We want to keep our current policy the way it is.
Yes.
I think our current policy says each employee.
I think our current
Oh, well, then that's,
In black is what, as if I understand Jess correctly, what's in black is our current policy, which is probably an MASC policy that was
Let's make it
adopted
the
in
way you said.
2021.
can we do that?
Off my top of my head, I would take out each employee I would strike that and say the Quabbin Regional School District treasurer and assistant treasurer who are assigned to the responsibility of receiving and dispersing school funds will be bonded individually or covered by a blanket bond.
Okay, but that doesn't cover you.
If you want, you can put the,
Director of Administrative Service.
yeah, if that's what the title's gonna stay, then I would add that in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, let's do that. Everybody good with that?
Even though I can't touch a dime? Okay. It's really, I mean, I called the bank last week to order a fob, which is a 7-digit number every few seconds, so that we can upload the direct deposit file to the bank. I just called to change a fob that I have in my drawer from an employee who's no longer here to give it to Stacy. I couldn't do that. The district treasurer had to give the authority to transfer that fob. That's not even money. That was just accessing.
They just fob the worst things off on you. Okay, so I think we're set with that one. DI, counting and reporting.
What do they say in there? Okay, our current policy says the district treasurer is responsible for receiving and appropriately accounting all funds. MASC is just put here, says the superintendent is, and correctly so. The district treasurer is an employee of the district.
Yep.
So I would.
Reports to Sheila.
Agree, right. I agree, it should say
Okay, so
super,
we're good on that one?
and I'm fine with all the other red language.
DIE, audits.
I'm not gonna get past this.
We do that.
DIE.
No issue of concern.
No
Do you have any comment?
No. They're just saying, they're putting in policy what we're mandated to do by law and BESE regulation,
Okay,
which
DJ, purchasing. No issues of concern.
again, they're just,
What we do.
Chairman.
yeah, it's just what we do.
DIA, our budget is not a cost center, so we change that cost center malarkey. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
appropriation, yep.
DJE. Yeah, $50, 50,000.
So, MASC recommends these changes, but then the changes are not kept up with the current law. So a number of years back, our policy, a number of years back, stated the thresholds for procurement and what the district would do. I came at that time to the committee and asked that we remove the thresholds that change all the time to just say to keep up with, or to whatever current policy, current
Sure.
statute
Makes
is on the
sense.
books. So I'd like to take out the references to $50,000, because that's not $50,000 anymore.
Or 10,000.
It's $100,000 for a supply, and it's $50,000 for,
Yep. So whatever the threshold is,
yes, that's what I'd like it to
Okay.
say, that
Done.
it's just going.
done, done. And then DK, payment procedures,
That's a real important one, change the word regulation.
regulation procedure, whoop-de-doo. Okay, DKC, expense, What's SC?
IRS.
oh,
This is what we do. We do reimburse staff who their regular schedule is between buildings. We do reimburse them the IRS rate to travel between buildings. I was confused by the red. We didn't get the chance to talk about this, but I was confused at the red on the bottom.
Let's see.
so what do you want?
Extra hour cost within budgetary limits.
So the first, all in the red on the last paragraph, to me, doesn't make sense based on earlier policies would say that the school committee has the right to transfer money between appropriation categories, cost centers, it says. Because if we run out of money in a travel line, it wasn't budgeted enough. The IRS rate went up in July. It doesn't usually do that. It usually changes. It does go up, it does go down. Usually changes in January. It changed in July and it went up in July. I may not have budgeted enough money in travel, but I don't think that I need to go to the school committee before reimbursing somebody because there's not any money in that account, because I have the right to come to the school committee for a transfer needed between appropriation categories. So I would like to strike all that's in the red in the last paragraph.
Anybody have a problem with that? No? Okay, done. Thank you, Sheriff.
You're welcome. We did all the rest of them before. Right?
Oh, we got
Public
one more.
gifts, right?
ACD,
Didn't we do?
did that
we
one
did that the last month's
last
meeting.
time.
Last month's meeting.
That's right.
Yeah, that's on the table already for the upcoming school committee meeting.
So we have this whole batch. Do we have a motion to present this to the school committee? Okay, Peggy's motion.
Second.
Please second. All in favor? Okay, no abstentions, no. All right. MCAS report.
So I think Joe and Colleen are going to speak to this. Let me just share my screen.
So how do we do, guys?
Well, I don't want to spoil the surprise.
It's on the agenda right now. How do we do?
Let me pull up the,
I think we have seen the continued impact of COVID. Our impact is not greater than the state overall, but that doesn't mean it's less of a concern. We have areas that we can point to of real strengths that we can and are and should be proud of, and areas for continued growth and improvement, as we will always have.
My recollection is we were up 12, 14% 10th grade math, and most of the rest held about the same or dropped just a whisker.
Yeah, I think it maybe had dropped a little bit, and we'll see that we're down from 2019 still. But holding steady relative to the rest of the state.
Okay, floor is yours.
All right. So I think I'm going to lead us through this. The first slide here is just showing us the percent of our students meeting or exceeding expectations on the MCAS last spring. Well, not just last spring, actually. So one on the left-hand side, it's the 3rd through 8th grade assessments, and the right side is the 10th grade assessment. So what I actually gave you was in the sort of gold or yellow bar is the 2019 result. So that was the last time we took a full MCAS before COVID. The middle bar in the red is our results from 2022. So our results just last spring. And then for comparison's sake, we have statewide results for those same grade levels for 2022. So I think that's getting to the point I was just making to Dr. Allen. You can see that we have had a decline since 2019. I don't think that is or should be surprising. We've had a lot of kids that had to miss school for very good reasons. We've had staff out for very good reasons, all very legitimate. And that has an impact on student learning. So, but then you can see what our actual overall percentage is very similar to the state. We're a couple points down compared to it in third through 8th, and just slightly above in 10th.
Now that's 2 or 3 subjects.
this is just ELA.
This is just ELA. So we're looking at the 2019 and 2022 results for Quabbin, and then the state is the 2022 results for the state.
Yep.
So same data, but now we're looking at math. So again, you can see the impact of COVID. We dropped about 9 points, 3rd through 8th in math from 2019 to 2022. And we're basically at the same percentage as the state. So with 38% of our students were meeting or exceeding expectations last year in 3rd through 8th. And for the state as a whole, it was 39%. 10th grade math, a little bit bigger of a gap compared to the state. So we went from 55% in 2019 to 43% last year. Statewide, it was 50% for 10th grade. And now we're looking at science. Same kind of data. Less of a decline, 3rd through 8th, right? 43 to 41%. Actually, and I know statewide, it's not up here, but there actually was a bigger decline to 2021 and then a bit of a rebound. So that's good news overall. And you can see we're very similar to the state and actually not 3rd through 8th and not that far off from where we were in 2019 for science, 3rd through 8th. In 10th grade, there was a little bit of a larger decline, but not as large as in English or math. 55% in 2019 for Quabbin, 49% in 2022. And that actually puts us above the state by a couple of points. So in ELA in 10th grade, we were a little bit above the state. Math, we're a little bit below. Science, we're a little bit above, all for 10th grade. Here's the student growth percentile. So one way to think about the student growth percentile is how much did our students learn in a given year compared to the state overall? The state average is always going to be, for all the students overall category, for statewide, the average is always going to be 50. And if you're between 40 and 60, you're seeing typical growth. So very comparable growth to the state as a whole. If you're above 60, you're seeing faster than average growth. And if you're below 40, you're seeing slower than average. And what you see is we are clustered right around the state average. So our students are learning very similar to the state as a whole, 3rd through 8th in ELA. ELA, we see that our growth was at 54, slightly above the state, but but within the average range, let's say. Same data for math. So you see the growth, I mean, a decline of a few points in growth like that is not necessarily a hugely significant change. 51 to 47, it's all clustered right around the state average of 50. And 53 to 49, very similar. Now we're looking at the percent of our students meeting or exceeding expectations by demographic groups, and these are the largest reporting groups in our district. So those groups overall, those are the all students category, which just as it says, it means all students. So we actually have seen these numbers already. But I'm using that to compare with our low income students, students who are identified as economically disadvantaged, and our students with disabilities. So these are percent of students meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA last year for each of these groups of students. And all 3 subject areas are up there, ELA, math, and science.
Why do we seem to be doing so much better than the state? Is that simply because we don't have minority candidates or low SES as much as the state?
Well, I mean, we'll see our accountability results and we'll see what there are various areas of strength. I mean, I think where we've seen positive outcomes for kids, it's through, extended learning opportunities, trying to support increased interventions. And of course, the efforts and work of our teachers every day in our classrooms. So here is student growth percentile by demographic group. So one of the things to note is that, not surprisingly, students with disabilities are less likely to be meeting or exceeding expectations. They've been identified as having a disability. But you see that their growth is actually relatively similar to other groups of students within the district.
If I can just chime in on that, what we want to remember with our students with disabilities and any of our students who might receive an intervention, because they're receiving targeted specific interventions, we actually expect ambitious growth from them because they're receiving so much support. So we would look, in order to close the gap, so to speak, we would look for them to have greater growth at a faster rate in order to close that gap.
Yeah, I mean, a way to think about that, to Colleen's point, when we see gaps in achievement between groups of students or between schools and the state as a whole, to close those gaps, you have to get growth above 60, right? So if we are below the state in areas or groups are behind, in order for those students to sort of catch up in terms of achievement, we need to see growth above 60. Here's meeting or exceeding by demographic group, and this is for grade 10, so it's very similar to the data we looked before. Previously, we looked at 3rd through 8th. This is just grade 10. And the pattern is very similar.
Boy, the state of Massachusetts sucks at math.
Are you guys, is that student with disabilities or is that?
These students with disabilities,
That's student with disabilities.
That's not the state.
Yeah.
those are our students.
So the yellow bar, or gold, is all students in Quabbin, grade 10, right? The sort of maroonish, red maroon bar in the middle is low-income students in Quabbin. And then the dark maroon is the students with disabilities.
Wow.
So there's not a state comparison on those slides, Dr. Allen.
How do we know that those 3 bars are those 3 groups?
There's a key at the bottom of the slide.
Where?
Right below where it says math.
Right
Yeah.
here. See where
Oh,
the
oh,
cursor
okay.
is? Right here.
Yep.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
How do we define low-income students?
Low-income students are students whose family receive one of several different kinds of services that are provided by the state. So that includes things like TANF, food stamps, mass health, but it also includes students in foster care. And I'm sure there are other services, but basically there is statewide services. If your family qualifies for one or more of those, you as a student are identified as low income.
And do we get that information from the parents? How do we get that information?
That is a great question. It's a bit of a black box for us, as I understand it. So it used to be we would go out and collect that information from families. We would collect information from families to say to know if they qualified for free or reduced price lunch, and then anybody that qualified would be classified as low income. A few years ago, there was actually a change. So instead of that process, their students are directly certified by the state and identified. So the state has a process that in Boston where they look at data from multiple agencies, and they're able to analyze that and combine data from different families to say this student this child is a student in this district, and this family receives this set of services or this specific service.
So then those numbers are based upon state numbers.
Exactly. So the state gives us our MCAS results and says, this is your results for students that we've identified as low income.
Now, Cheryl, wasn't this an issue a few years ago or a couple of years ago? Because we would send out requesting this information and I guess that had something to do with free meals, et cetera. And some of the money we would get back from the state or maybe from the feds, and we weren't getting the information from parents, or so not all parents, but I mean, some parents, sort of like we couldn't figure out who our children were that.
Right, so actually there's a big meeting coming up, a class, I guess, of how it's being calculated, because as Joe mentioned, so there's multiple ways in which you can qualify for free or reduced lunch. And Joe explained on the federal level what they're doing now is they're getting information for all these different agencies. So if you are seeking services from a certain agency, they consider you to be low income. In addition to that, the parent or guardian can fill out a form of income verification and see if they qualify within the thresholds that the government had set, the USDA has set. Even though we're supposed to still collect them this year, nobody's submitting them because everybody's having free lunch. And so the state has gone to this direct certification method in determining what low income is now. So those applications will help for a parent that my father went to his grave without asking for anything from anybody. He would not fill out one of those forms. I had to ask my mother to fill out a Pell Grant for me for college because he refused to, and she took it to her grave. He told me I could never tell him. Would not ask for a cent. There are parents like that families that won't do that, but they may not have money for school lunch, and they would fill out this application, and if they met those thresholds, they would still get free lunch. They wouldn't be in that low income number from the state.
Okay.
They don't count those anymore.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then student growth percentile. This is just for 10th grade is just all students in low income because we had too few students on an IEP in 10th grade to have results reported. So if you have a student count under 10, and in 10th grade, it's literally just one class for us, obviously, then we don't report results for those students. So we don't have growth for students with disability, but we can see that we have it for all students overall, obviously, and then also for low-income students. And growth is very similar to state average in both cases. So school accountability percentiles. So this is switching gears slightly. What we just spent a few minutes going over was our MCAS results for looking at 2022, comparing it to 2019, and comparing it to the state. But the state also gives us some other data. The other data they give us is on how our schools are doing compared to other schools around the state. MCAS is obviously a major part of that. It is the biggest. It includes MCAS achievement and growth are part of the accountability percentile. It also includes things like chronic absenteeism. For the high school, it includes what percentage of our students are taking advanced coursework. It includes our graduation rate. There's a number of indicators, but the indicators are weighted, and MCAS is the biggest part by far. But then what the state does is looking at all those data, they try to say, how are our schools doing compared to other schools across the state? So the gold far left says this is how our school sort of compares to other schools in the same category. So one category is elementary and middle school. That's one category. And then high school is its own category. So for example, Hardwick.
Doing great.
Hardwick is doing well. It overall, 56, its accountability results are better or the same as 56% of elementary, middle school and middle schools across the state. So above average. But what you also notice, we get those accountability percentiles for the subgroups. So for example, low income, Hardwick's performance was the same as or better than 69% of schools. I'm sorry, that's high needs. High needs students, their performance was the same as or better than 69% of elementary and middle schools across the state. So that's really good. And when you look at just low income, it's even better, 83%. So Hardwick's achievement in their accountability categories overall was the same as or better than 83% of elementary and middle schools across the state.
Now, Hardwick is such an anomaly because they probably have the poorest center and they have the wealthiest center of any town.
Yeah. So we can see that all of our schools, are sort of fluctuating around the state average and have sort of different strengths and areas for sort of continued growth. But I did want to highlight Hardwick.
What's the green?
Students with disabilities.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
so we only had 2 schools with enough students with disabilities to have accountability results, and that's Ruggles Lane and the middle school. So they were that accountability percentile was included for those 2 schools. I should have made this bigger, I'm realizing. So just some observations that we thought were worth sort of calling to your attention. Overall, we're growing on par with the state. So that means the amount of learning occurring in our district is similar to the state as a whole. And that's true for our students overall. And that's also true for our largest demographic groups, low income, special education, those kind of students like that. Achievement is down compared to before the pandemic. That is not a surprise, and that's a statewide problem. But our results are very much on par with the state overall. But with that said, we do need to accelerate learning or increase learning time to complete unfinished learning. So we have kids that have gaps in their learning because they literally were out of school for significant amounts of time. Across the state, they gave us the statistic, and now I'm not going to remember it, but the increase in chronic absenteeism, which is the kids missing 10% or more of school days, it was an astronomical increase because either kids were worried about COVID or they had COVID or their parents had COVID. So the number of kids who were out of school was so high that I don't think we have to wonder what the cause of the decline in achievement was. But there still was a decline. And we think figuring out how to get students where they would have been were it not for the COVID is a significant challenge. So I think those are the, not exactly brilliant insights, but still real observations about the impact and results, the impact of COVID and the results we've seen. So I think the last slide we have is what are we going to do about it? And I think that's
being on an average with the state is nowhere near acceptable.
Exactly.
Agreed.
We agree.
So what are we doing about it? So one of the things we're doing about to address ELA needs is implementing the new literacy curriculum. So we believe that one of the challenges, one of the reasons that we're seeing challenges in ELA specifically is gaps in foundational learning, specifically phonics instruction. And we selected this curriculum in part because of a strong foundational literacy component. Grants for extended learning time. You may remember last year, and I believe the year before, we were very successful in getting grants for vacation academies. We also had a summer STEM camp that included literacy and other academic content areas. We did that last summer. So as those grants become available, we will continue to apply for them. We will have funding, continued funding for next summer for a summer program. But assuming that the grants for vacation academies become available, we will apply for those. We are looking at a variety of interventions in the middle school, opportunities to support students who are struggling the most. We have programs like an online program called IXL that we can use with kids. And we're trying to find other variety of ways to sort of support and intervene with those students. We're looking at new science and wellness curriculum in middle school, high school. We are applying for early college designations to get kids in as they get ready to finish up in high school, give them a chance to accelerate their learning. We're working with our newest teachers on professional development, a model we called Lesson Study. We believe that supporting them to get on board and sort of up to speed as quickly as possible will support our kids. We are looking at piloting new curriculum materials for math. We'll be piloting those this year. We have some supplementary math curriculum. ST Math is in the elementary schools, and IXL I already mentioned we use in the middle and to some extent in the high school. Our student support and success teams identify kids who might be struggling in one or more areas and need extra help and support, and they are reaching out to those students to see how they can help them be successful. We are providing professional development around the science of reading for our teachers, as well as culturally and linguistically responsive teaching so that we can provide the strongest teaching on a day-to-day basis that we possibly can for students. And then we are providing social emotional learning lessons so that students can be prepared to learn when they come into our classrooms. So those are all the things that we are working on now. Well, maybe not all of them, but many of them.
Comments or questions from school committee members?
What was our absentee rate during the couple of years?
I can find out.
Joe.
And how would it compare to the state if we have that?
Yeah, just give me a second. I can look. So
Colleen, when you do your graphs, why do you put 3 through 8 together?
We did that just as an overview, so we can also do them by school. We share with the building principals by school for more data. But for your purposes, we sort of do them together so that you can see them a little bit more holistically. But if you want a deeper dive into grade levels and content areas, we're happy to provide that to you.
I just didn't know if there'd be bigger fluxes in different classes.
You can see
know?
more differences between grade levels and content areas, things like that.
Would you like those graphs, Peggy?
Yeah, kind of, I mean.
Sure.
we can do that. Okay, so looking at students overall for Quabbin, the percentage of our students chronically absent was 32.2% last year. So about a third of our students were missed 10% or more, which is a very large number.
Yeah.
Statewide, it was 27.7. Our attendance rate overall was 91.1%. And for the state as a whole, it was 91.5. I'm going to look at ours before the pandemic. So before the pandemic, 11% of our students were chronically absent. So in 2019, that school year, so we went from 2019, 11% of our students missing 10% or more of school day. And the chronically absent number just, there is good research that tells us that kids that are chronically absent struggle in school. That 10% number is not sort of randomly picked. There's real evidence that that's a meaningful threshold. So 11% in 2019 to 32% in 2021.
Do we know what it is so far this year?
We could find out, but I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, actually, hold on.
The middle high school principal has been tracking it weekly in her
newsletter.
in her weekly staff newsletter. And it's been fluctuating, but it feels like it's mid-90s right now.
94, 95, 96?
Yeah.
So it's actually up since
Attendance,
pre-effort.
Yeah.
You may remember that a few years, our chronic absenteeism has been something that even in 2019, we were concerned about. You may remember Mr. Devine implemented some changes to our attendance policies in the middle high school, and that improved the middle high school chronic absenteeism, but still did not reduce it to the level that we would like to see it at. So even that 11% is in 2019 was concerning, and we were thinking about ways to support students in getting to school. 10%, that's, of the days, that's 18 days of school. It's a lot of days, And when you're in a, particularly at the middle high school, when you're in a trimester schedule and you have a 60-day class and you miss, even if it's evenly divided between those 6 out of 60, it's a lot of time, and oftentimes it's clustered, and you could miss a third of a 60-day trimester if you're chronically absent.
So 18 days is our
That's the threshold for
That's the
chronic,
threshold.
right? 10% of the days would be 18
right, so
days.
we may have kids that are, wow. To somebody who had 4 years perfect attendance in high school, that blows my mind. I mean, 18 days at least.
One of our success stories of our summer camps was we actually had a student who missed over 100 days of school. That we got them to attend our summer camp. They attended every day. They did some work, some interventions, and then had a really nice trajectory when they came back to school. Their attendance had dramatically improved. So
Have to do intervention with the parents.
that is part of it. Yep.
Middle school, Dr. Allen, middle school.
Middle school, yeah.
Jeez.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
And can I just add one thing? That is, I just want to highlight that is the work, not only that our administrators do, the intervention with the families, but it's the work of our social workers, our school adjustment counselors. That's why those positions are so critically important, is building those bridges and relationships with those families to get those students into the school building. They will not learn unless they're in the school building. And so that is, they spend a great deal of their time focusing on this is one of many challenges that children face and families face, but that's really where their efforts are focused in many cases, and just getting the student in the door and making sure that once they're here, they're having a good, positive, successful experience. And oftentimes that requires a lot of, a transition. If a student's missed almost 100 days of school, there could be some school phobia involved after you haven't been in a school environment for a number of days. And so that whole planning around how do we support this student and what's that transition plan look like, and You don't even have to be absent for 100 days to have those types of
We have
things
some-
kick in, you know?
We have some plans in place right now. I'm sure all of our administrators could talk about with students and families where we're trying to re-engage them. So our goal with our summer learning last summer was about engagement and trying to engage hard to reach students and families and get them to have a positive experience in a smaller group of students. But imagine coming back and being back to being part of large classes in a large school community. So I just want to give our administrators a shout out. I know I've been spending time in their buildings and I see some of the very unique systems and structures they've put in place. They're trying their best, but it is a lot of work and they couldn't do it without the support of the counselors and social workers, and families are a huge part of that and whether we succeed or not.
A couple comments. You didn't just look at those down here. Kids having trouble, kids having problems. You looked at early college, getting ready for college and that sort of thing. I have a good friend on this table who said his kids got through, was it 3.5 or 3 years?
3.5.
By taking some of these advanced placements and that sort of thing. So that's saves the parents some money. Kid is, if he or she is capable of that, you know, they're going to be bored in a regular. So that's a very good thing. And could you, at our next meeting, talk a little bit more about the things that we're doing and what our expectations? You know, this doesn't cost us much and really does us a lot. This one is kind of a problem, but we think it holds potential. Changing the text or the curriculum, you know, why we're doing that and what the result we expect from that. So could you
Sure.
do that?
Yep, absolutely.
I think that would, yeah, Mark?
Yeah, I'd also like to see maybe like a more robust presentation on actually what you're doing with the parents. Because to be honest with you, this is a little bit of a parent issue rather than, you know, we could say that, you know, it was the pandemic. Well, the pandemic's kind of like, Mr. Biden says it's over. It's not totally over, but the bottom line is it's almost over. So I see, like, you know, if I didn't go to school, do the parents get a call like first thing in the morning when the kid's not in school? And what do they say?
Well, it depends. I don't know how it's handled at every school. I'll speak to the middle high school. There is an automated call that goes out, and then the middle high school teams are watching that attendance data. And when students have multiple absences, then there's a process for intervention. So it may be the counselor that reaches out. It may be the social worker. We increase the intervention with parents as we see that attendance data becoming more and more problematic. So there's a team, the student success team that Joe and Colleen mentioned in their presentation. You know, they sort of examine student all types of student data, student achievement data, attendance data, and they start to watch for red flags, and then they determine what's the best intervention to address this red flag, whether it's grades are slipping, student attendance is declining, behavior is increasing. And as a team, they look at the student data, they talk about what they're seeing in the classrooms and in the school environment. And then they determine what is the best plan? Should the principal call? Should the counselor call? Should the classroom teachers call? Those are the types of things. I don't know if one of the elementary principals wants to give an example of how something like this would be handled in elementary school. Shelley?
Sure, I can talk about that. So each day, once the teachers have submitted their attendance for the day, our office manager prints out a list. We actually have our nurse call the families and reach out just in case the child is sick. She can provide them with some supports, or ask them if anything else is going on, if it's anything that has to do with any social emotional issues or family issues. We can always refer out to the counselor or I can reach out to the families as well, but we do make phone calls each day to all of our parents if the students are absent.
About how many kids a day do you reach out to, and how many do you make what you consider a decent contact with?
It varies from day to day. I could say anywhere from 7 up to 15 at times. We call each day. And then we just track the reasons why they're out. So if we ever have to go back once, as Dr. Muir was saying, we follow up after students are exhibiting excessive absences. We will follow up with the parents as well.
Do you think that most of those calls are productive? Get through to parents, you get through to somebody that says, oh, I understand I shouldn't do this, I should have my child there, or this is a problem or whatever, or I say, yeah.
I would say the majority of the parents that we talk to are really receptive and they really want their children to be in school. There's a few parents that we have to reach out and ask to meet with them and try and set up some supports for them to get their children to school. But we always come from a place that we want to help support the families. And we ask, what can we do for you to help you get your child to school?
Okay, well, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mark, do you want a little bit more next meeting?
Yeah, I guess maybe like a little bit of timeline. I kind of agree with Lee. I mean, 18 days is like ridiculous. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, from my perspective, from my children's perspective, and from perspective when I went to school, the nuns would have, they would have walked to my house and dragged me in. But the bottom line is, I think when we're presenting like a first-class school, we want to be, top line, we really need to show they're making a great effort to get these kids in school. I think it's critical. That's, like you said, how are they going to learn?
Yep.
And it shows up in some of the other scores.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're looking at the MCAS scores and really not that great.
No. Okay, any other comments or questions? And we'll see you again next month.
And every month after, yes.
Good. Okay. Class enrollment under 15. I think we all know what that one's about.
Yeah, so you have this data in
We have a
your,
report? Data?
I believe it's in your, we can start with middle school because if you don't mind, let me
I
just.
don't mind, but I don't,
You don't have
It was
a,
in our
Don't have any.
packet.
no, we don't have that.
I'm sorry. I thought you put it in your folders. I have, let's see if I have it printed here. I could.
Do you want me to run some?
That would really be helpful, I think.
Yes. How many people would like a paper
Oh, I
copy?
think we all should have one.
Okay,
don't
that's
mind. And
middle
let's-
and high school, yes.
Let's hold on that one, go down. Formal approval of director reports at school committee. Now, this is the one where Mark Brophy was asking, should we adopt the superintendent's presentation? And Walter said he wasn't so sure. He told me afterward he had read Robert's Rules of Order on that point, which said, if you adopt it, you own it. And Lee was of much the same opinion. So it seems, I've talked to Sheila, I talked to Walter, I talked to Mark, I talked to Lee. One of the benefits of being down the Cape was just a few of us, and we could meet in my office, which many of you won't appreciate. There's a big conference going on, but there's one little room with 5 or 6 easy chairs. And that's where I set up shop, and I visit with people as they come through in between sessions. So anyway, I think we have a couple of choices. One, we accept it in some fashion, which means we've heard it, but we don't adopt it. We just accept that it was presented to us. Or we leave it the way it is, which is she tells us, and it's written down, and I think it's very good, it's very cohesive, and it's a step up in helping us have the information from the superintendent. So you see any other?
No, I don't see any, I mean, again, I feel as though, I don't personally think it's necessary for you to approve it or accept it. It's really just a written version of what I used to provide verbally to you. Now the directors are each, Cheryl always had her report. And now each of the other directors is adding to the report. But it really is,
I think for me, it was like just another form of us trying to share and collaborate and get information about our meetings and our information because.
It's an enhanced form of communication.
Exactly.
Well, and the more that's said, the more that's out there, which is a good thing.
And also, it's after the fact. So how can you not approve something that we've done last month?
Well, that was
Surprised.
part of the issue. How could we not either, well,
I think they're
the
trying
word
to
game
do
is
something
weird,
more-
approve, accept. I'm not sure what we think each one of those things mean. If there's a statement, yeah, I know you did some research. Go ahead.
No, I agree. No, but this one really bothered me after we left because there's a whole lot of layers to this. Okay, that I got stuck on the word approval. And it's just what you guys were saying, that it was the directors and the superintendent reports on the implementation, the evaluation, or the discontinuation of policies that we've already voted on. And I think my thought experiment was what happens if 8 or 9 members of the school committee decide they don't approve of Colleen's report or Joe's report? What's the consequence there? And I think the other end of it is too that we understand what this is all about. We're pleased about the fact that and respectful of the fact that people are working hard and they're providing us information, and it may be a way of patting them on the back or giving them a compliment. But I think that given a different makeup of the school committee, this could become evaluative. And I think it infringes on the superintendent's authority. The only people that the directors are responsible to is the superintendent, not the school committee. And I think if we start approving documents or reports that are after the fact, we open up ourselves to a whole mess. Just what Walter said, if we pass it, we own it. And I think we should just let it lay.
Yeah,
Anybody have any disagreement with that?
it's no different than anything else on our
Exactly.
agenda, any other report. You know, we're
Exactly.
not gonna adopt Evan's report and the kids' reports, and it's the same thing. If we had a written version or a presentation, we don't adopt all that.
It stays as it is. Okay. Now, back to class enrollment under 15.
so the packet you have in front of you, let me just.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I'm going to pull it up on the screen so that those who are not here can.
Now, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yes.
No, I'm just looking at like math, English, math, social studies in the grade 7. Why would those classes be small?
So it has to do with what you're seeing is.
Usually they're huge.
Yeah.
Right, and some of them are. The ones you're seeing are just the sections. So that are smaller than 14. So we have many that are above 14, but we have some sections. This does not typically happen in the middle school, but
No.
one of the challenges that we're facing in the middle school actually has to do with the sharing of the specialist teachers. So, you know how we share some of the specialists with elementary schools? And and we also share some of the world language teachers with the high school, a world language teacher with the high school. And what that does is it skews equal distribution of the students among the periods in the middle school. And so what has happened, and it's more significant this year than in previous years, is that a seventh grade math teacher might have, and I probably can, I don't know if I have the raw data on this, might have three sections that are 28, 27, 26, and one that's 14. And so what you're seeing are the sections that are lower than 14. What we would like to see is that evenly distributed, 25, 25, 25, 26, 26,
Yeah.
26. But it with the sharing of the specialist teachers, it's just not possible to make the schedule work quite
What's a
that way.
specialist teacher as opposed to any other?
Like art, music, art, not music, but in middle school, art, physical education, digital wellness, world language. I just want to pull this up on the screen. French and Spanish, yes. So.
And I can't wait until we get the one. Yeah.
So what you're seeing here in the first two pages are the middle school courses that are sections, not courses. Not every seventh grade math course is 13. It's just one of the seventh grade math is standard level. Well, actually two have 13 in them. There are 8 sections of middle school grade 7 math.
Okay, go ahead.
2 with 13.
I would have a question for the teachers then. Does that class that's 13 excel?
I mean, we'd have to see at the end of the year.
Have 30.
In theory,
Yeah, it's like 10.
in
Oh,
theory.
that's like
That would be interesting data. to-
Where do you get to the one that has orchestra with one student? I want to see this orchestra.
Yeah, we can explain that. I knew that was going to be a question.
The challenge, I can just speak to 7th and 8th grade. So it's a scheduling challenge. So if students choose world language or French or Spanish, and they're in those sections opposite of a math time, they may not be getting in. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's like, it's a scheduling thing. And I can speak for the teachers. They would much prefer more equitable distribution of classes to keep them
No, I
more
understand
like
that. but
22.
You or I, as a parent, I would love my child in a class of 13.
As opposed to 27.
Yeah. I'm just curious if they get to advance more quickly because of their size.
It probably depends on the subject. I mean, robotics,
Yeah,
mean,
you-
we're
you're thinking kids that are,
Looking at math and English.
right, but there's AP, there are AP classes too, and those are going to be tougher classes. So, I mean, one would hope that the kids that are
No, we're
taking AP
talking the
are,
middle school.
well, I'm just looking at all of them. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
looking at numbers that are.
No, I understand once they get up into AP, that we've always seen those class sizes be smaller
Right,
due to what the child
Those
chooses.
growth numbers would be fun to watch, MemCast and.
It'd just be interesting to see. And I'm not blaming anybody. I was just like, it would just make sense.
My question
what you-
was, why are there no 6th grade? Are there no 6th grade classes under?
No.
Okay.
So what you're seeing are this classes with 14 or fewer in middle school is between, depending on the quarter, between 12 and 15% of all the classes in the middle school. Just so to put these numbers in perspective, it's about 12 to 15%, depending on the quarter, of all the classes in the middle school. Any questions before I move on to high school? Any particular questions on middle school? It's really, as Colleen said, it's a function of the schedule and the choices that students make for world language in 8th grade and the sharing of the teacher availability for.
Are we going
the-
to be stuck with this? Because this
We are-
is almost unprecedented. And we're going to have, this is going to continue, or is it going to, I mean, we used to be ROTC, calculus, things like that. Trey, we understand small student numbers in those, and that makes sense. And we should still keep those courses, IPAB. But, I mean, just a regular garden variety, math, science, social studies, middle school, doesn't seem like a good idea at all.
I think what you'd see on the, if you saw the rest of the data, which we can bring to the next meeting, if you saw the class enrollments in the courses that are not 14 and under, you would see classes that were quite large. and-
25-ish.
No, more than 25. I think we've got 28s, 29s, and some probably even in the 30s. So what we want to do is even it out. And we are looking at some potential schedule changes for next year. We've had a scheduling committee at the middle high school for over a year now. And we're looking at some potential schedule changes that could mitigate this. But this is also because of staffing limitations. If we were to have a French teacher dedicated just to the middle school, we would not need a full-time French teacher in the middle school, but we would be better able to flexibly schedule when those French classes took place. Right now, we're taking, when does French not have to be taught in the high school? That's the time that we can put the French teacher in the middle school, which limits the amount of not only students who can take French, but when French can happen. And that throws all the other specialist schedules off. So it's really a scheduling and staffing challenge. And as our middle and high school enrollment continues to stay low, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see challenges. Some scheduling changes will mitigate this, but in order to truly fix this, we're going to have to stop sharing staff, and that's cost money. So, it's this trade-off, right? We can't afford to hire more people than we can afford to hire. So the sharing is what's driving some of this.
Well,
This is your way of making it work with less staff.
Correct.
I think we're going to accept this, because we always do. Most of the class, except for this middle school thing. And let's say next month, why don't you tell us what you're going to do about it and what you think is going to happen?
Sure.
I think that's the best way to handle it.
There might be a couple of months. It might be more into budget times when you're thinking, I need this, to make it really work.
Well, honestly, as you all know that, in order to make a schedule change, we have to start to talk about collective bargaining and, what those types of things can. So I'm not sure we can bring the final answer, but we can
We're
talk to
not
you
asking
about
for the
some of
final
the things
answer,
that we're
but the
thinking
kinds
about.
of things that you're thinking of doing to mitigate this. And Walter, you had a comment. Mark, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, like you was just pointed out, moving into budgets, at some point, you may have to take a look at some of these courses. I mean, staffing is 70% of the budget. I mean, it's a significant portion of the budget. And if you're running really small classes, and it gets to crunch time, like in the spring, then we may have to take a hard look at some of this stuff. Or people may want to even take a look at it now and say, are there any here that, maybe we could,
It seems,
And I'm not for eliminating it, don't believe me, I'm not for eliminating any courses.
no,
I think it's great that you have a course with 9 people in it. But the bottom line is still presents somewhat of a budget.
well, it almost seems ironic that Sheila is telling us that she needs these small courses to have the flexibility because it's less expensive to do that than to have a middle school French teacher and a high school French teacher, for instance. And yet when we look at it, we say, well, if you got 6, 7, 9 kids in a class, then that's got to be more expensive. And she's saying, in some ways, no, that's a more economical use of personnel. So
That's the way she can sell it. Yeah, I mean, really, to people.
It truly is. Short of the only way to, if short of saying, we're going to spend more money to even out the classes. So evening out the class sizes, we would need to hire more staff. The alternative, if we could find them, right?
do we have a French teacher coming?
We do not. We have a high school French, we do not. We have a French teacher who retired last year, who was with us through December, but we do not have a French teacher. We are working very hard to find some alternatives, but, and Colleen's been working with the high school principal and others on trying to find a viable alternative if we do not have a human being, because we have, but even if we did, the bottom line is that we would be looking at study halls. We would be changing our program of studies. If we said we are no longer going to be able to afford to offer world languages in the middle school, those students have to be somewhere during that period. So we have to have an adult in charge of them. And so we would, if we said we're not going to have a teacher in charge of them, we're going to put them in a classroom with a human being, a substitute teacher or paraprofessional or something, that would be like, somewhat of a cost savings. But what are we giving up to do that? We are
That's bad education.
We are changing, exactly.
We
Going backwards.
Well, we are, because it was about 35, 40 years ago. We said, we had kids taking 3 study halls. Said, if a kid is in school, he or she is to be in a class, learning something, not sitting in a study hall. That was school committee. It wasn't written policy, but that was school committee directions.
So that's in terms of the middle school. We still,
Lee?
Are you done?
I didn't know if we're shifting to high school. I just want to make sure I pull up the right screen that we have the data.
No, I was going to follow on Mark's point, and I understand what you're saying, and your point is very valid, but we are going into negotiations, and we always have our budget fund. I mean, somebody is going to grab at some point onto this and follow through with what Mark said, is going to say, oh, 4 kids here, 4 kids there, 5 kids here, 5 kids here. You can get rid of a teacher and we could cover those 20 kids, which is the same argument that they use in the elementary school, like, oh, you have 30 less kids in Ruggles this year. Well, you can fire a teacher because that empties out a classroom, thinking that all 30 kids are sitting in the same classroom the year before. I mean, the logic obviously doesn't follow, but people will pick up on it. And so I think part of Mark's point, and I would follow it, is we need, as I think you've put out here now, but we need to be able to have that basis to say, okay, we see what your argument may be based on the numbers, but the reality is this, and then be able to articulate that.
And we all need to be able to articulate.
That's what I mean. We need to be able to articulate that, because if you say, fine, let's not have AP Calc for these 4 kids, that doesn't mean the teacher is not doing anything. I mean, the teacher is going to be shifting to do something else, but what about the 4 kids? I mean, we can snowball a lot of these answers, but I think what happens is you kind of need a baseline answer, because sometimes these questions may come up.
I think one of the reasons that we have, I would hope that one of the reasons we have 300 kids school choicing here is because we do offer some really good courses.
Stuff, right?
Yes.
So we got to work this into, because, come spring, this stays the same, then some people may ask for an explanation, and I think we need a standard explanation.
Yeah.
We do. Now, but before we move on, though, I want to hear about the one-man orchestra or one-woman orchestra. one-person orchestra?
So the way the orchestra is scheduled, it's scheduled at the same time as the band, the symphonic winds. And so what the music department does is they're very creative. We went back and forth as we started to make decisions about should we run orchestra because the numbers are very low. They have 30 students in middle school orchestra and I think 50 or 60 students in elementary orchestra. And we maintained the orchestra courses this year because we know we have students who are preparing to be part of the orchestra in future years. And we know that enrollment's going to increase, or we expect that it will increase. And it's very important for us to have high school role models for those elementary students who are aspiring to be accomplished musicians. And so we made a conscious effort to hold on to the orchestra. And what the music department is doing, because it's scheduled at the same time as the symphonic winds, those students who are in orchestra sometimes play together as an ensemble, but oftentimes they're broken into smaller ensembles with students who are in the symphonic winds to work on pieces of music as well. So the music department works really flexibly. You'll see in trimester 3, there's one student in orchestra.
I did see that.
And what they're hoping to do actually is, we did not run jazz band this year. And what the music department is hoping to do is actually shift. And instead of running orchestra in third trimester, have a group of students from symphonic winds and the one student who's in orchestra become a jazz band for the final trimester. So they're working on recruiting students and shifting that course to be jazz band in trimester 3. So our music staff is incredibly dedicated and incredibly creative in trying to make sure that we're offering as many opportunities as we possibly can, and being so flexible in the way they think about how they put these students together so that they give them very best experience that they can. So that's the story with orchestra.
Boy, an orchestra to a jazz band. That's like soccer to field hockey.
Well, I do think our music department is trying to give them the correct designation so that, when people look at their transcript, they see them as performing in an orchestra. So I think.
Oh, is this Harry Lewis? Is he the one?
I don't know.
I don't know, actually.
I think just to speak a little bit more to the high school courses that are low enrollment, I just want to give you the overall picture. So in trimester 1, we have 29 classes that are 14 and under. That's 18% of the courses. So even though it looks like a long list, and it's longer than it has been in recent past, it's 18% of the courses. Now, you'll notice that we've made some notations here. Our alternative high school program, you all understand that has to be a small program. That is the course. Those are the students that are more than 2 years behind in credits. They need almost individualized attention. And so when they take science, there are 7 of them taking science. There may be more than 7 in that classroom at that time, but when the science teacher is assigned to be there, 7 of them need science instruction. So some of these numbers can be misleading because what they're representing is data that we're pulling out of our student information system. And what it looks like when you actually go into that classroom there may be more than 7 students physically present in that classroom when that science teacher is there. 7 of them are working on science. 5 others may be working on English. The English teacher doesn't happen to be there that period. So I just want you to, think about, just try to give you some context in some of these courses. You can see, as is typical, our NJROTC numbers are, although the program itself is very robust. It is, when we start to get to the different levels of the courses, we have small numbers in some of those courses. You'll also see many of our low enrollment courses are Innovation Pathways program courses. And you may remember that program during COVID, there was a little bit of a lull in that program, and we were having some challenges in recruitment. We didn't have the opportunities to actually interface face to face with those students and help them to understand the program. So we expect, and through the work of Therese Salvador and Joe, who's been working very closely with the program, that those numbers are going to increase in future years. But we have to maintain those programs so we have them for the students who are upcoming. We are also looking at, as part of this scheduling work, at maybe reducing the number of different Innovation Pathways courses and trying to find ways to have one course serve many needs, particularly in the beginning stage of the Innovation Pathways program. Another thing we're looking at as we move forward to mitigate some of these smaller AP courses is to look at opportunities for AP and IB courses to be taught simultaneously. That's something we tried early on in our work with IB, and it wasn't super successful. But I think we're going to go back at it and find places. There are some schools where that's happening and happening successfully in certain courses. Not all IB and AP courses are aligned curriculum wise, but there are some that are, and we're going to start to explore that as well and see if there are places there where we can give students the opportunity to take both simultaneously. I'm just.
Okay.
Would be good.
Anything else you want to tell?
Just looking, and honestly, we are. This is a function of being a small high school and wanting to and feeling strongly.
Being a good small high school.
Being a good small high school that has a robust and diverse program of studies, and wanting and really making an effort to maintain that. I will tell you, there were 20 courses that we did not run that were low enrollment. So we didn't run every low enrollment course. And some of these courses, so when we make the decision to run the course, based on we have to make the decision based on student requests for the course. So that's the data we have to say before they go into the scheduling process. We look at how many students requested this course, and then we say, okay, it's close to 14, or, this is a course that students need to finish a program, so we're going to run it anyway. But some of these courses that are now enrolled at, say, 10 started out with student requests of up to like maybe 14 or 15. But after the schedule all plays out and conflicts happen, and I can't be in X course and Y course because the only time they're running is in the same. I get in one, I don't get in the other one, and that makes that course enrollment decline. So, but there are 20 courses that started out as under enrolled that we didn't run at all. So they're not on this list because they're not running. So it's not as though we run every course. We try to be as selective as possible and run only those low enrollment courses that that we feel we must run to maintain programs. But the smaller we get, the harder that is. And the only alternative is to eliminate programs
Or have the orchestra play with the jazz band.
or have the orchestra play with the jazz band. Yes, sir.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
When you look at the single numbers, I mean, I did a quick count. So there's 28 courses that are covered both by ROTC and the post-grad, and those numbers are going to be low anyway. You look at a number of the others, and we're talking, I know 15's our cutoff, but there's a load of like 14s and 13s and 12. So, I mean, to me, those aren't really bad numbers. I guess, to me, I'd look at the single numbers. And then you're getting into, when you get into the single numbers, you get some of the IB stuff, a couple ABs, a couple of the, the tougher courses that, obviously we want our kids to take. So, I mean, if you really parse through this, I don't think it's as bad as it initially when we looked at it and saw, 7 pages of this stuff or whatever.
Well, I think, yeah, when I look at it, the biggest problem I see is this middle school, regular courses.
Yeah.
And Sheila sort of explained that one, but
Yeah.
still, we'll get more next month.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we all set?
Did we do
Those middle school,
We're not going to do the,
October 1 enrollment?
no,
Okay.
that needs a little bit more refining
Okay.
Specialists like.
before we get that.
Gotcha.
So, all set? See everybody next month. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Lee, I sent you,
I got it.
text. Okay.
Thanks. I didn't look at it yet, but I got it on my, I saw it on my
This
watch.
You and my
ABS,
wife.
APIB thing. Talk to Evan about that.